Housing prices are a nightmare. And renting can be worse with some apartments. I never understood paying over $1,000 to stay at a place per month if I could put that towards a mortgage. If only the banks saw things my way as well. I needed to find a place I could afford. And I got desperate. So I bought a house no one with any kind of sense would even consider. I found myself standing in an unfinished basement with a nervous real estate agent. His professional suit looked out of place in a dark and creepy basement like this. So, you think I can paint over this? I asked him, trying to break the ice. We both stared at a pentagram carved into the stained cement. It also was painted over with red spray paint with odd writing around the circle. The stains in the middle of the gruesome symbol were blood, but confirmed from a chicken. The house I was thinking of buying had been foreclosed 5 years ago. It stood empty, and a group of edgy teens took it over. They used the basement to try and summon demons or got drunk. A couch sat off in the corner, and if I bought this house, I needed to pay someone to take the couch and burn it. I had no idea what the stains were on the cushions, and I never wanted to find out. Besides the basement, the rest of the house really wasn't that bad. We went over the rest of the house for the next few minutes. The structure had no issues, and the water heater still worked. The house lacked heat right now, but I could get a small space heater if I needed. I lived in a hotter part of the country, so some sweaters and 2 pairs of socks would work until I could afford to install heat. My plan was to buy the house at a rock-bottom price, and then work on it over the next few years. I could afford to buy it. Who really cared about a crappy pentagram in the basement? It's not as if those things actually did anything. My real estate agent looked very happy to get the property off his hands in such a pain-free way. At least no murders happened in the house, and no one claimed it was haunted. I bought the house, changed the locks, and put in a security camera at the front and back doors, in case those kids thought about coming back. I moved in my few items and got trying to work on the house. I got rid of the couch first thing. I found an old TV and DVD player hooked up downstairs, and dread came over my body when I found an old box of horror movies. I sold the TV and DVD player for a little bit of cash, and tossed the horror DVDs. I had very bad memories associated with most of them. They weren't even good movies either. All low budgets with plots that made no sense. The one was borderline pornographic, and it held most of my worst memories. I burned that disc and forced myself to forget about it. I found out that the pentagram would take some work to remove. They carved it into the cement flooring. I had no idea how to fix it. I needed to talk to some of my contacts I made through work and see if they could do something for me. I mean, I could mix my own cement and fill it in, right? But what if I didn't use the right cement and it chipped off after I painted? No. Best to let someone who knew what they were doing fix it. I didn't have a time limit and wasn't worried. I just removed the paint and got rid of the chicken blood as best as I could. The first month was uneventful. I contacted someone to do the basement flooring, but he couldn't get to it for another month or so. I showed some coworkers photos of the basement before I cleaned it, and the jerk started to call my house the murder house. I kept telling them no one had ever died in the basement, but they refused to drop it. I do some work relating to low-budget horror movies. A director said he would pay me $100 if I would let him repaint the pentagram and let him use the basement for a set. I refused. I didn't want a small crew coming through my place for a month or so for shooting, and he was the kind of director who picked up side projects. He worked with some girls producing homemade, adult-oriented horror content. I didn't judge him for that, but didn't want my basement to be recognized because those sorts of videos go around online. He found someone else with an even creepier unfinished basement, fine with a pentagram and props, so it was no loss on his part. I kept telling myself I wouldn't let the look of the basement start freaking me out. No murders in this house. It wasn't haunted. I had nothing to worry about. Then, odd things started to happen no matter how much I wanted to dismiss them. First, I started to hear noises at night. I woke up needing to go to the bathroom at 2 a.m. My body was on a timer I've never been able to fix. No matter when I drink last, I need to pee at 2 in the morning. I struggled out of bed and braced myself for the cold darkness. I needed to pull up my sweater soon. A scratching noise made me stop. I strained my ears, listening, and even brought my feet back under the blankets in case a bug or rodent was moving around under my bed. After a few minutes, that sound went away. I tried to place what I'd heard. I slowly went out into the hallway and turned on every light and looked for any traces of what the noise could have been. After 30 minutes of looking, I heard a tree branch tapping against a window in a spare room. It was close enough to the sound I thought I heard. The next day, I trimmed back the branches, thinking the nightly noises would be solved. Either way, the branches needed to be cut. I'd forgotten about the noise until I came home late one night. The sun had already set, and I came inside to get ready to crash for the rest of the night. My job kept me for too long, and I just wanted to shower, then sleep. I walked past the living room and noticed a box had fallen over. I owned a lot of horror movies, and I mean a lot. I tended to get a few copies from other people I worked with. I sometimes had doubles of the same movie and stored them in boxes. It felt wrong donating gifts, so I kept them to slowly give them to others who may enjoy the movies more. With people getting into streaming services, it got harder dumping DVDs on fans. I knew if I didn't put them away now, I wouldn't do it for another week. I didn't know how the box fell over in the first place. I thought the small stack was stable. I packed them away, but one case wasn't fully closed. I noticed when I picked it up and grimaced at the title. It was the worst movie I worked on, and the one I already burnt a copy of. A friend signed this one, so I had to keep it. I shut the case and realized it was empty after handling it. The disc should be rattling around in the cheap plastic case. I looked around for the DVD, wondering if I forgot it in the move. No loss if I did. I saw the DVD player was on. I hadn't touched that thing in over a year besides moving it. Actually, I didn't even remember plugging it in. I reached over and pressed the button for it to open the tray, and saw the missing DVD resting on it. I then went around to double-check the locks to try to figure out if someone had gotten inside my house. My cameras didn't pick up anyone breaking in, and nothing besides the DVD had been moved. I must have done this while getting a snack in the morning. I once fell asleep in the middle of eating a piece of bread at 3 in the morning, after I got up to use the washroom. If I had passed out eating, it was possible I put the movie on in the middle of the night and forgot all about it. The only other options were someone broke in without my security camera seeing, and only messed with one thing, or my house was haunted. A ghost who knew how to use a DVD player and wanted to watch some bad horror movies? Not likely. I told my coworkers the next day, and they laughed it off with me. Some were starting to give me some spiritual protection stuff as a joke. Some sage, some table salt, and one got me one of those salt lamps. I dumped all of their thoughtful gifts beside the front door, ready to forget about them. A month went by and I started to get uneasy. I was either sleepwalking a lot or going crazy. I heard small noises in the night, but they all had an explanation to them. From the wind to a mouse I caught and set free outside. I started to notice missing food. Not much, just enough for me to question it. I added another camera, just in case a homeless person broke in somehow and was living inside my cupboards. I checked over the house a few times, seeing no signs of anyone living in the walls or attic. Then something happened that I couldn't ignore. I got done working on repainting the god-awful kitchen cabinets and came into the living room to eat when I noticed something. The box of DVDs was open, the cardboard flap sticking straight up. I went over to check on it and found a few spaces of missing DVDs. That was weird, but the weirder thing was I finally noticed my DVD player was missing. I barely ever used it, so I didn't even see the empty space on the shelf until I stared directly at it. It was one that opened up with a very small screen, but you could also plug it into your TV. I looked all over for that damn thing and to see if I saw any signs of someone breaking in. I still wasn't sure if I had a very crafty person secretly living with me, or if I was walking around moving things asleep at night. The last place I looked was the basement. I hated it down there and did laundry as little as possible to avoid it. I found the DVD player hidden away in a dark corner, plugged in and with missing movies half hidden under an old sheet I'd been meaning to throw out. I collected the items and booked it upstairs, freaked out. I barely slept that night, even after putting a chair under my doorknob in case someone was getting into my place. I didn't want to go to the cops just yet. I didn't have proof, so I set up some cameras inside my house. Just a few to catch me sleepwalking or whatever else was happening. I caved and hired someone to bless the house, feeling stupid over the entire thing. It didn't cost too much, and what was the harm? If they were going around blessing houses instead of a real job, they clearly needed the cash. I spoke with a friend of mine who suggested I might have pissed off one of the actors I worked with, and they started messing with me. They could know a person who could hack into my camera feeds and make it seem like they weren't breaking into my place and moving things around. He suggested setting up some that weren't hooked up on Wi-Fi and recorded to a cloud storage, but instead went directly to an internal storage to be reviewed later. I took his advice and kept a camera hidden pointing towards the front door under some coats. The noises in the night were starting to get to me. I even put a line of salt over the bathroom and my bedroom doorway. Couldn't hurt, right? And ghosts didn't like salt, right? With how little I slept, it wasn't likely I was behind moving things around while sleepwalking. I needed to get to the bottom of this. When my friend cemented over the pentagram, I finally got a full 8 hours of rest. I didn't realize what kind of effect that thing had on me until it was gone. The second night after the basement was returned to normal, all hell broke loose. Noises above my head woke me up from a deep sleep. I jumped out of bed, listening to something moving around in the attic. I wrapped the blankets around me, heart racing. I listened, trying to gather the courage to go up and see what the hell was up there. My teeth clamped tightly together from the fear of hearing rustling and moving above my head. A chattering from the attic, and my fear faded a bit. I thought I knew that kind of sound. I needed to put the pull-out ladder in the hallway to double-check, though. I would be pissed at myself if I got this scared at something I suspected to be up there. I grabbed some gloves, an old mask from one of the movies for protection. I pulled on the string to the ladder, and dust came drifting down. I very slowly brought the ladder down, not wanting the thing in the attic to realize a new opening appeared and fled into the house. I took the steps one by one, careful not to make any noise. I only put my head through enough to look around. The attic was cramped and smelled like years of dust built up. I switched the flashlight on. The chattering came again, and I directed the light toward it. Two eyes reflected back in the darkness. We both froze in fear, seeing each other. More of the warning chatters came, and I sighed, seeing a very scared raccoon looking back at me. This house had been closed up for 5 years. I should have checked out the roof to see if any animals could get in. I wasn't in the mood to get a rabies shot, so I slowly backed down. I closed the attic, ready to call someone to deal with my new roommate in the morning. At least it didn't go for my face. This cheap mask wouldn't really do much to protect me. I didn't think I could sleep that night. I left the house, giving the raccoon some space. I spent the rest of the night getting food at any places still open, and driving around until I felt tired. I got back home before the sun rose. I hoped my new friend already left. Feeling tired as hell, I climbed the stairs, ready for bed. Even knowing all my issues had perfectly reasonable explanations, I never cleaned up the salt lines. I felt foolish putting them down and even bothering burning the gifted sage. Now with the raccoon, I've been able to explain away nearly every strange event in the house. The salt had been useless and was disappearing over time from me stepping on them by accident. Or I assumed that's what happened to the salt. I must have been very quiet getting home and going up the stairs, because the other mystery roommate of mine didn't hear me. I wished it was just another raccoon roaming my house. I could have dealt with that. I reached the top of the stairs mid-yawn, and didn't see what waited for me at first. At the bathroom doorway was a shape that made me freeze. My body refused to move no matter how much I wanted to scream. Something was hunched over, face against the floor, licking up the remaining salt with a long, tube-like tongue. It sensed me looking at it, and the head raised up, tangled black hair covering most of its face. The part of the face I saw nearly made me faint. I'd been stepping towards my bedroom, and instead of trying to escape by running down the stairs, I only took a single step forward when the creature moved. It crawled up the walls and along the ceiling on 6 arms that were hidden under the long black hair. It dropped on top of me, pinning my body to the ground. The long and crooked fingers dug into my arms, trying to keep me still. I kicked, trying to get away. In my struggle, I only moved upwards by a few inches, but that made my sweater slip up to expose my stomach, like an invitation for the monster to dig right in. The face drew back, and to my horror started to open up into sections. I worked on horror movies, and since they were so low budge, we could never manage a creature like this. All the monsters I've seen were terrible CGI or craftwork splashed with a gallon of fake blood. The real thing was so much more terrifying. I screamed louder than I ever had before. I kept screaming, unable to do anything, as that mouth filled with pointed teeth traveling down into a pitch-black hole of a throat got closer. My lungs emptied and I found myself coughing with tears in my eyes. The mouth so close, and yet it didn't take my face off. It slowly started to close back up to a more almost human face. The nose a bit flat and eyes wide and dark. It stared down and I gasped for air, mind blank from fear. "Michael Mills?" The monster spoke in a low and raspy tone. I stayed still stunned. It knew my name? Well, of course, if it had been inside the house for a while, it could have figured out my name easily enough. When it spoke again, it explained why it knew my name. I felt fear, but for an entirely different reason. "Teen Scream Body Killers Part 3? Raspy voice, the same as any random horror fan I've come across in public. I started to shake my head. I would rather be eaten than anyone talk about that damn movie. It was the first one I agreed to be in, and it ruined my life. I needed the money in college. I needed the cash real bad. I cannot understate that fact. My dorm mate asked me to be an extra in a low-budget movie, and I ended up being the lead role after the other actor backed out. It got me a few $100, and I thought doing an adult scene wouldn't be too bad. I mean, it wasn't real, right? I wasn't actually doing the deed on film, it was just shot as if I was. I did my job and tried to move on with my life. When the movie was released, a few other directors called me for other smaller parts. It changed the course of my life to be doing minor acting parts, but thankfully with no scenes as graphic as the first one. When I didn't find parts, I was offered to work on set and got pretty good at applying zombie or ghost makeup. I didn't even want to work on low-budget horror films like this. I had no chance of actually becoming a real actor, and no one would ever hire me for something decent due to the movies I'd agreed to be in. I went to school for accounting, for God's sake. I thought through all of this to put off the mortification of the monster seeing that movie and recognizing me from it. "Oh, please just kill me," I begged and half meant it. The monster let go of my arms and backed up. We both sat in the hallway, it sitting like a dog. All the arms moving around, unsure of what to do. The creature wearing some torn up and stitched together clothing of mine I thought I had lost in the move around its waist. The chest flat, so I assumed it to be a guy. This all begged the question of what this thing was and why it watched horror movies. "Have you been the one behind all the noises and things moving around?" I asked, arms sore from where he grabbed me. He kept looking everywhere but my direction. When I pulled down my sweater, he was finally able to make eye contact. "I tried some food, too. Not great. Like the floor stuff," he commented in that creepy, raspy voice. Salt works great for demons and ghosts, my ass. I wondered why the salt lamp looked a bit thin on one side. He must have been looking at that, too. I reasonably wanted to be pissed off at this monster, but got lucky that he wasn't eating my face off. "Can you leave? And not kill me? What even are you, and what are you doing in my house to start with?" I asked, hoping for good answers. "I came through from far away with a spell made in the ground. I'm stuck in this building. Cannot leave. You ruined the way back when I slept. No way of getting home. What I am, not sure.
Just me. What are you? Besides food and a story man.
He asked, eyes unblinking in my direction. Goddamn goth kids. They did bring a creature back through their pentagram. They either didn't know what they did or saw this creature and bolted to not come back again. I ignored being food comment. I understood him not knowing what I was or what to call himself. He wasn't human and was from a different world. I got extremely lucky I wasn't dealing with something that had more teeth. He must have been inside this house alone long enough to figure out how to work the TV and DVD player to watch the movies left behind. What were the chances I bought a house that a monster who was a fan of that trash was trapped inside of? Can I remake the pentagram and send you back? I offered.
Not likely. You can try. May I request information?
He asked suddenly, and I backed up, seeing a mouth full of sharp teeth after he smiled. I nodded and tensed up, ready for him to attack again.
Do you know of a part 4?
He asked, ignoring my personal space, and got up close to my face. I crawled back, trying to get away, only to have that ghastly face get closer and closer. Our noses nearly touching, and I lost my balance, falling backwards. The monster got out a pair of arms to catch me before I hit the ground. Yes, there is, but my character died in the first 2 minutes, so I never watched it. Or got a copy, I admitted, heart beating from fear, staring at those endless pitch-black eyes.
Oh.
He sounded really disappointed. The face pulled away, and he lifted me back up so I was sitting again, and not bending my back trying to get away from him. Again, I considered if death might be better. When he spoke again, I decided yes, I wanted to die, instead of suffering through our next conversation.
Screams taste good as flesh. The part of story with you and the girl screaming tasted the best of all those stories. I do not know why it took so long of you stabbing her for her to die, but it was very enjoyable.
I really wanted to die. I buried my face in my hands, not wanting to see that nightmare of a face looking so innocent. He really misunderstood that part. He brought up my traumatic dark past as if it was nothing. In the movie, I did stab the character after the terribly embarrassing act ended, but that was not all that happened in that scene. We weren't... I only stabbed her once, I corrected, feeling like I wanted to cry from embarrassment. An awkward silence came over us for a solid minute that felt like 10 years. He broke it by a small sound that made it clear he clued into why I felt so mortified.
I am unsure of my current emotion,
he admitted, and I didn't want to hear that either. You should have just eaten me, I commented and pulled my hands away from my face. Getting back on track. I need to get rid of you. How can I do that? To my sheer horror, the monster shrugged all of its arms. This had been the worst night of my life. He looked over towards my room and then got back on all fours. After a big stretch, the creature yawned. I could see the darkness in the hallway getting brighter, showing the sun would be rising soon.
I must sleep. We talk later, right? Fine? Later?
I sat dumbfounded. This thing was going to stay inside my house. I opened my mouth to ask it again how to remove him from my house, when the monster's body started to sink into the hardwood floor. He told me again we would speak later, and disappeared before my eyes. I was stuck with a creature because I bought a place thinking a pentagram in the basement wasn't a big deal. A noise made me jump, showing the raccoon was still in the attic. At least I could deal with one freeloader. I went to work dead tired, but needed to take my mind off what happened. The bruises on my arms proved the encounter happened, or I really had lost my mind and did it to myself. I didn't really tell my coworkers what I saw that night, worried about their responses. I arrived home expecting to see the creature the moment I walked inside the door. I considered renting out a hotel room, but my wallet said otherwise. The cost of safely removing the raccoon hurt my savings. Somehow I passed out on the couch, only to be rudely awoken by a pale face inches away from my own. I screamed and pushed the monster off, yelling he needed to not scare me like that. When my heart slowed down, we had a short talk about him hanging around. We both doubted I could figure out the right spell to send him home. Even if I could find an object, he claimed to have enough magic to send him back. He was stuck there for good, it seemed. I could move, but where would I go? The money I would make from selling the place wouldn't cover anything decent. I was as stuck as the monster. The upside was, he agreed not to eat me. Yet. His words hit a thread of not being able to hold back from taking a pound of flesh if I didn't provide him with a different food source. He could eat the terror and screams and other meat like raw beef or pork. I was a bad actor, so my fake screams didn't do the job. I needed to let him jump scare me at least once every 2 days or so to keep him pleasant enough to live with. He also said that he could eat the fear from a recorded scream if a different creature hadn't gotten to it first. I handed over an old iPad with headphones for him to look through YouTube videos at night, trying to find a meal or two. Most nights he didn't have much luck, making me extremely nervous over just how many monsters there might be out in the world. I don't know how my life got to this point. I got stuck in a job I felt embarrassed doing for the most part, and with a house I can't move out of. The threat of not providing enough food made me scared enough to give my new roommate a meal or two a week. I hated living in dread of him jumping out from a dark corner at any second. The waiting for it to happen really was the worst part of the deal. After a few weeks of being forced to live with each other, the monster crawled out into the darkness of the hallway and announced he decided on the name Teddy, and then crawled over the ceiling to do who knows what. I think he's really out to kill me. How on earth can I be that scared of him when he pulls that kind of crap? Teddy? Really? I better land a really good acting job that can pay for me to move out of this place, or else I'm gonna be eaten. Because this roommate of mine is really growing on me. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. Today's video was supported by patrons like Mark from Earth, Crimson Muse, Joy Burton, Diane Showers, Mark Sewall, Cheryl James, Pick Your Sticker, Teddy Dog, Glue 404, Mamakato, Dante Kincaid, Zarin Ray, Angela Donovan, Blarian 50, Devin Kyle, Timothy Baird, Ajeti, Bert Turner, Bajani Aspinall, Michael Pierce, Big Joe, Carrie Harkonnen, LaDonna Spivey, Scott Tanaka, Tom Stewart, Sherman Davis, Bryce Shelton, Susan McClendon, Elise Batiste, Lisa and the Cult Jam, Open Circuit, Fabulavore, Raymond Jaggers, That Darn Fox, Raison Detra, Kai Gaming 99, Windy Burns, The Wendigo, Michael Squishy Park, The Gemstar, Vault 77 Citizen, Puppy Dan, Clovis Wolf, Eldridge Elm, Derek Prey, Elder Being, KC Hawaii, Rob T, Tragic Mermaid, Darren Fishnaller, Cloves Anoya Harris, Roe Underwood, Florida Man Luke, Bethany's Mom, Winter's Kiss, Sam Brooke, The White Stag, Corgi Connection, No Name, Marta Cara, Professor Elm, Kathy Barrickman, Cybard Sands, Steve Hennessy, Melanie Sanders, The Archivist, Rob Smith, Term 4, Naz Razio, J. David Wellman Jr., Parker Lewis, Monica Moya, and DMaster311. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. It really does help out a lot. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.